Amazing. Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for your interest and attendance in this session. My name's Bridget, and I'm the manager for the Advocacy and Impact team at Volunteering Tasmania. Could we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Palawa people as traditional custodians on the land we're meeting on today through Lutruwita. I pay my respects to their elders past and present and recognise their continuing connections to the lands, seas, skies and waterways of Lutruwita. I express my gratitude that we share this land today and my sorrow for some of the costs of that sharing, and my hope and belief that we can move into a place of equity, justice and partnership together. I would also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are here with us today. We'll go to the next slide. So today's session is the Volunteering Masterclass on volunteer management platforms. So we're going to have a look at where do volunteer management platforms fit in. Sometimes they can feel like either a side project or the sole driver of something. So where do they actually fit within our volunteer programs? An overview of various platforms available, and I'll keep that very brief because then we'll go into the panel with Vanessa from St John's and Kate from MRC to talk about their experiences with volunteer management platforms. Then we'll have some time for some questions. And then we'll close hopefully at 12 today. I'll just get my notes for the next bit. So where do volunteer management platforms fit in? So volunteer management platforms should be scaffolding to an effective volunteer program and not the sole driver. That is not to diminish its importance, but simply to place it within your volunteer programs where it can have the greatest impact. Volunteer management platforms are underlying structures that can project a volunteer program forward in its success. So when we're looking at the national strategy for volunteering, which was released in February this year, we can see that both volunteer experience and conditions for volunteer to thrive are key pillars to the 10-year strategy. The effectiveness of our internal systems can greatly contribute to these pillars. Systems can ease the engagement and transition points for a volunteer's life cycle with your organisation, as well as strengthening the organisation's quality assurance, compliance and HR requirements. So what I feel like that means is that the volunteer management platforms can really allow you to engage with your volunteers on that meaningful level, because the software can allow that transactional level to be taken care of. From the national strategy, we then jump over to the national standards, and I believe some of you may well have attended our session at 9:30 this morning around the national standards that have been refreshed. And we can see how volunteer management platforms would directly impact your organisation's ability to meet, exceed and celebrate best practice volunteer management. So I quickly went through the refresh standards and had a look at all of the different parts of those standards and just ticked off where I could see that volunteer management platforms could really enhance a program. As you can see, there are 7 there that directly felt like they related to a well-organised volunteer management platform. So that's the volunteering is embedded in leadership, governance and culture. Volunteering participation is championed and modelled. Recruitment is equitable and diversity is valued. Volunteers are supported and developed. And volunteer safety and wellbeing is protected. Volunteers are recognised. And policies and practices are continuously improved, which is incredibly useful to have a platform that can support us to have both best practice, but also to see where we're going into the future. Volunteer management platforms do have the capacity to really enhance our impact, or how we tell our story of our impact, to both the individual volunteer but also to the stakeholders, funders, and all of those kinds of things. They really enhance that story that we would like to be telling. I also wanted to share with you at this point a quote that my colleague reminded me of yesterday that comes from James Clear. And it says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system." And I think this really speaks to the importance of having good structures in place so that we can be creative and enthusiastic in our volunteering, knowing that the systems are there to support us, not to drive us. So I think that's a really nice way to think of where systems sit within our volunteer programs. So if we could go to the next slide. Oh, we've gone backwards. There we go. Amazing. So here on this slide, I just wanted to say that we're not directly, I guess, promoting any of these following platforms, but rather exploring them. So the needs for your individual organizations are going to be really different, and where they are, where your organizations are at in their journey of software and platforms is going to vary. So it's really important to make sure that when you do start investing and looking into it, that it's fit for purpose for your organization. So while we've got these ones up here, I really strongly encourage you to have a look at what your needs and requirements are before diving into any of them. So there are many volunteer management platforms, and when we come down from the big concepts of the national strategy and the best practice standards, we need to look at what a volunteer management platform looks like on the ground. So there's many volunteer management platforms, and they don't all do the same thing, and they don't all do it for the same sized organizations. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. So while we will be talking about a few different types, it is important to ensure that you do your research and choose a program that meets your organizational needs and also your strategic purpose. So platforms tend to be used for and are advertised as working in either recruitment or management or both. So when we look at how a volunteer management cycle platform can support our organization, we can look at the volunteer life cycle. So a volunteer starts with recruitment, and the software can help us with posting opportunities and collecting potential applicants. Volunteer onboarding and training. So that's where we can hold our HR documentation and policies and procedures on our platforms. We can start building relationships with our volunteers through the platforms. So the communication out of opportunities and updates to volunteers and making sure that those communications are personable and relevant. We can also allow volunteers to schedule. So you can allows you to keep track of when volunteers are scheduled, or may let volunteers schedule their own time, depending on whether that is something that you're looking for. It also allows for quite a comprehensive volunteer appreciation and recognition. So an accurate record of the contributions that volunteers have made while they're with your organisation means it can be really personalised. You've got the whole life cycle of a volunteer from the day they started to the day they finished and any interactions that they've had. Then you can really tell the story of that volunteer, and that's going to mean a lot when recognising their contributions. And volunteer retainment. The platforms allow for consistency, clarity, and clear processes, which means less frustration for volunteers and more time utilising their skills, knowledge, and passion for the activity that they want to be there for. It also means that there is an accurate record for your risk management and insurance policies, but also for your impact statements. Knowing exactly how many hours your volunteers contribute to, what for, and for what outcome is a powerful impact statement for funding. So it can be incredibly useful on that front. Often our funders will ask us how many volunteer hours are contributed, but being able to hold all of that information, break it down, see the trends, all of those kinds of things can really show the depth and knowledge of the volunteer program while not necessarily taking additional time from that volunteer manager. So they can be incredibly useful. And I'm now very excited, if we go to the next slide, to welcome our panel for today, who are going to be talking about their experience with volunteer management platforms. Obviously, I've given quite a high level view of it, as well as a little bit more about what it could be used for and what it could be helpful for. But I'm really excited to hear about the experiences that both Vanessa from St John's Ambulance and Kate from MRC Tasmania have had. We might stop sharing so that we can see the faces of everyone that's here today. Welcome, Vanessa and Kate. Thank you both for your time. It's lovely to see you both. So we'll start with the first question. And I might start with you, Vanessa, if that's all right. And the first question I have for you today is, what platforms do you currently use or have used to manage?
I think Bridget may have froze, but so just going on with that question. So my name's Vanessa. I'm the State Youth Officer for St John Ambulance in Tasmania. We currently use a couple of different, well, we've been using a platform which is called Orchestrator, which is really a, I guess it's more a bespoke platform. And realistically for that, what we use that for is to have all our information of all our volunteers on there. It also has our information around the access to policies and procedures, information on hours that volunteers have done, and also volunteer, and then also rostering any volunteers for any events and activities that will be involved in that, and picture the ID photos and everything for all of our volunteers. This includes our young volunteers as well. They are divided out into the different areas, or what we call as divisions, but we have also recently, we're actually in the process of moving over to a platform called Operoo. Now, Operoo is and this will be purely for our youth members. Operoo is a platform that is utilised through many schools and sporting clubs and things like scouting clubs as well. It is a paid platform, but the reason we've done that is twofold. So that we are now in compliance with the new child safety framework that's coming in January next year, and ensuring that all of our information of our youth members are locked down so that not everybody can access it. Only those that need to be in that space can do that. And it's also so that we're able to do things like take payments for the youth for when their uniforms and things like that come through. We can also do a lot of communication through that space, do things like newsletters and have forms filled out in there, and particularly if there's any camp forms and stuff like that, that can be pushed out through there, and also then brought so then people can fill it out. And also that then the onus is back onto the family members or the youth member to be able to then fill in their information about things like their allergies, their food preferences, their medical conditions and all of those things. So then we can have them in one space, and those people that need to access that information can access on a really quick basis, because it does come with a phone app as well. So it just makes life really easy. The really good thing about this space, and because of all the and it is being used by one of our other partner states with St John Victoria. But one of the good things is that it was also then able to be fitted into that authentication, two-factor authentication as well, so that, because that's where we're going with all of our platform stuff. So it just means that once again, that's able to be fitted into there, and also we're able to fit it back to our other platform, which is Orchestrator. So Orchestrator has been really great. We are updating that at the moment, but it is really, for me, it's about being able to move into those spaces. So it is a youth-friendly space. It is easy to report from. It is able that we can access any of the, wherever we are out and about, we've got that access to the allergies, particularly around, in the middle of the bush, and you can't access parents really easily. So just having that information on hand is really great for our leaders as well. we do recruitment through Seek Volunteering, and we have also used the volunteer platform as well, and just going through there too. We have found that Seek is probably better at this stage because we're able to collate those the applications through Seek, and then it's just easier for me to then collate that and grab that and then go back into that space instead of just receiving emails ad hoc and trying to report, then having to respond as well. But it just makes, I guess, the same as any Seek platform. It's just easier to have all of those spaces as well. So, yeah.
That's
Kate,
great.
it's up to you.
Yeah, Kate, would love to hear from you as well around the platforms you currently use or that you use to manage the volunteers in the volunteer program.
Okay, so I use a platform called Better Impact, and we've had this for a number of years now. So I'm pretty sure it was around 2015, maybe early 2016 we introduced it. It replaced a terrible Microsoft Access database that didn't work really well at all. So Better Impact is a fully online system specifically built for volunteer management. It does also have other modules that you could use, which I don't use, so I'm not even going to talk about. But there's basically the advantage that at the time for this system, when I was first looking at different platforms, and this was, like, remember, a long time ago in digital speak, so it's almost ancient history. There's two sides to it. There's an administrator side and a volunteer side. So there's effectively, the volunteers can register themselves into the database and provide all of that custom information that we have built into the application form that we might request from the volunteers. So they've then got their own user account that they can then use ongoing for forever, assuming that they log in to it. It does also have an app, which is good. It's only an app for the volunteers. There's no administrator app at this point in time, but it's quite handy if they've got the smartphone and they've got the login that they can go into. So the advantage of this system is that the volunteer can log in and essentially keep a record of their volunteer contribution to the organisation. So they can log in and log their hours against the activity that they've done, technically speaking. I'm not going to say it works all the time in that the volunteer actually has to do it, but it's a good thing to do. The other thing I like about this database is that it's got that customization around it. So you're not restricted to what the software might tell you want to get from the volunteers, but you can build the application. You can build the volunteer profile yourself. So and you can change it and update and everything. So I can ask questions on an application form. And so I've got the information that I need to know what might work best for that volunteer and how that volunteer can best contribute to the organisation. The way I do it is we don't advertise generally specifically for volunteer roles. So a lot of potential volunteers will come to us through word of mouth. And so they're not applying for a position, though you could have that as an initial expression of interest if you wanted to. But basically, I provide them with a link to the application form, and then they complete that after I've already had that initial meeting with them. It's really good for tracking all those compliance checks, which I know is is something that we have to do. So it's a way of knowing that everyone's got an up-to-date police check, working with vulnerable people registration, and any other thing that I might want to add there too. And then you can set activities to be based on certain, what they call qualifications. So if you want to be a driver mentor, for example, you have to have that ticked off as that you've got a current driver's license in the database, and just little things like that. So it's really good to build, to have that overview of your compliance across the organisation for the volunteers, much like you would have for an HR platform for paid workers. The the big area that I really need to work on is the activities that the volunteer does. So basically, it's currently set up. So this is a position description that we have for a volunteer, and then we assign that volunteer to that position description. As you know, you all might be aware, it can get very onerous. You can end up with 50 million volunteer position descriptions. So I'm actually on a project at the moment to condense that down based on programs. But then the volunteer can see that they've assigned themselves to that position, so they know what it is that they're doing for the organisation. There's also a way that, depending on your settings, that if you are interested in doing it this way, that volunteers can sign up for this, because there's all this whole shift management system in there as well, which I don't use. So it's got a lot of potential. I can see it working really well in place, like in a shop where you've got volunteers that will come in for like a morning shift or an afternoon shift. So you can sign them up for a shift, or they can sign themselves up for a shift. It's got that option in there, and it depends on how you would work to do that. It's got really good search functions. So like I said, you build that application form with what you want, so the customization of the application. So you might, like a big one for me, obviously working in a multicultural organisation, is language. So it's very easy for me to find a volunteer that might speak Farsi, for example, or other, anything that you want to search for, as long as it's in that customization, then it's very easy to do. And that's really good to help you find the best fit for something that you might be looking for if they haven't applied for anything specific. Another thing I quite like about the database is it's easy to use. It's not a difficult piece of software once it's set up. Like, some of that setup is not great, obviously, when you have to set something up, but that it's easy to go back and fix stuff or to change stuff. So it definitely doesn't look the same as it did in 2015. It's developed a lot within that time. And I've designed it specifically to make my life easier. And that's what I like about that customization on it. On saying that, though, I'll just be really, really quick. I am conscious of the fact that 2015 was a long time ago, as I said, which is ancient history in the digital world. So I am thinking, what else is out there now? I work a lot in systems for some reason. Like, I just do a lot of system stuff across the organisation. So what else is there that potentially might work for MRC Tasmania? So I will be honest and say that I'm open to other opportunities. I've had a bit of a look at, I've just temporarily forgotten its name, Involve, the new one, Involve, which attracts me, but it's got less of that volunteer involvement in Involve. But yeah, I think it's good to be open to other systems rather than staying with something just because it's there.
Yeah, it's a really great point, Kate, and thanks very much for your reflective sharing there as well around how we continue to understand what's the best fit for our organisation. Vanessa, I really appreciated your point there as well around what the accessibility of the platform is for you when you're out and about and engaging in a hands-on moment with participants in a program, to ensure that we can ensure that we're providing that great duty of care and safety measures as well for participants. And then the variance there as well around recruitment. Now, Vanessa, you spoke to the platforms around specifically recruiting for a role, and Kate, how you highlighted the word of mouth capabilities in the recruitment space, as well as you unpack the different systems and how they're used. So thank you for sharing. On to question 2. What's the most important function for you when it comes to volunteer management platforms? And sometimes it's hard to pick our favourite flower or a favourite pet, but I'm going to ask you to do that. What's the most important function for you when picking a volunteer management platform? Vanessa.
I think for me, it's about accessibility and also the reporting in the background as well. Because if I'm not able to pull reports easily, then you sort of try to find that information, then that can be, well, why we're bothering to use this. But I think particularly for volunteers is that accessibility, particularly volunteers who might not be digital savvy and everything as well. And even that customization, like with Kate mentioned, like with the orchestrator, it's not customized. We can't customize it, but whereas with Operoo for me, it is that I am able to customize it, so I am able to use it for our youth members. But I think the other really important thing, particularly for our youth program, is to make sure that it is child safe, to make sure that around that accessibility, and to make sure that not everybody, only those people that need to access that information have that ability, but also we have those higher ups within the hierarchy that can access that information at any stage that they need to. But yeah, particularly the digital access at the moment is becoming more and more. We need to be able to access information on the fly, not have to be sitting in front of the computer. So if I need to, then I can go, or I'm looking for such and such in these different places as well.
Great, thanks. How about you, Kate?
Yes, I really wish I had an app for the admin side. If I'm not in front of a computer, it would just make my life easier sometimes. So for me, I actually really like that snapshot of a volunteer profile. I like the fact that I can log in, I can go to a person, I can see everything basically on one page. And I'm also, it's I know Mel just asked the question. It's quite easy to see if someone's got an expiring check coming up. You can actually tell it to tell you something, basically. It's also, there's overviews on the homepage, and when I run reports, it's very easy to run reports, and reports are downloadable to Excel, and which you can customize further, of course. I also adapted it last year. So with the customization, you can set fields to private. So you can ask a question of the volunteer, for example, and then I might have something underneath it that's a follow-up for me, or something that only I can see. So I used to do a lot. I used to have a lot of stuff offline, like in different systems as well. So for example, if you're a new volunteer, you've come along, I've sent you the police check application form. I'm waiting for you to send that back to me so I can make sure everything is correct and I can get that processed for you. And it's like, how do you, like, if you've got so much happening in your head all the time, how do you track that? So I used to have a different system where I would like kind of tick off, this is where it's at. And then I just put it all into the database. So I can now like show whether you've got the police check application form, whether I've sent it off already and we're just waiting for it to come back, or if it's finished. I know it's a little bit of double up sometimes, because then you're also recording the expiry date of that police check, but it's kind of like a really good tracking tool for me. So I really like that customization of it. And I think I would miss that. And I think I would, to go back to a different, like to tracking in a different system, I think that would be a little bit annoying for me. And I think my other favorite feature about the database, and I think it's a really important function, is the communication tools within the system. So within Better Impact, you can send out bulk emails, or to everyone, or to as few people as you want to, or to individuals even. So you can, if I wanted to communicate with all 200 volunteers in the database, I can just tick a box and it goes out to all those volunteers. So the email does, you can also set up templates and emails. So that's really good. I think it would be frustrating to have to go into, like, to do it all through Outlook and set up distribution lists or whatever. So it's a very handy tool. I get from one-to-one communication, I still use Outlook because it's easy tracking for me and keeps me, it's in my inbox. But you can also keep it entirely within Better Impact if you wanted to do it that way. And it does also have an option where you can send text messages, but I've not used this. I don't know if it would really work, in the sense that the volunteer has to opt into it. There is obviously a cost associated with it, and I've just not really, every time I've spoken to Better Impact about it, I've never actually proceeded with it. I'm not really sure why. It just doesn't, I think I just prefer to send texts individually as required, rather than going through the database to do that. But it does have the option there for you. And also two-factor authentication, really important. So for admin users, you can set up two-factor authentication. So it's that's really important, I think, in any major database where you're containing lots of information on people. And also the software developers, they are based in North America. I'm not sure if it's US or Canada, but they do have high, like they comply with all standards around software security. So that's really important, I think.
Thank you. I'm assuming you can hear me again now, and we're all back. Amazing. Thank you to the BT team for being as flexible as you always are. My computer decided it was done for the day. What I've heard from that question was that really that back end stuff is just made so much easier with the volunteer management platforms. And it's really about being able to keep those records quite up to date and relevant for the programs that you have running, and possibly some aspects of it that you haven't necessarily explored yet, but capabilities there to expand and grow and change the way that you do things as our volunteering programs grow and change to do things. So my next question is really about how does this enhance the volunteer experience? So how does having this in the back end, and it's, not necessarily knowing that your volunteers wouldn't directly know whether it's there or not, or whether they're interfacing with it or not, that how does this for your programs enhance the volunteers' experience? Vanessa or Kate, I'll leave it up to you. Who wants to answer that one first?
I think for us, so for Orchestrator for our adult volunteers, that is a platform where people are able to roster themselves on for different activities and events that are coming up. So that makes it really easy in that volunteers can interact. Unfortunately, there's no app with that particular one, but hopefully this next reiteration there may be. But for us needing to know who's going to be on those events and who's going to be in charge of those events, and also having those qualifications so people are understanding of going, I can go into my profile and go, oh look, I know that my working with vulnerable people is expiring, which is not a great thing for me anyway, but it gives me those opportunities to have control over that information, and also then upload any qualifications as well, so that so we've got an idea. It also keeps me on track of knowing, I know what qualifications I've got, I know what promotions I've had, I know what else, how many years of service I've done, and all of those sorts of things, and any awards and stuff that have been put into that system, which for me, like as a volunteer, I think is really great, because then I can understand what I've been doing, what I've done, and also know the numbers of hours and meetings and things that I've attended. So keeps me on track with that. But as a person who then also puts people in for awards, being able to see that information for somebody, I can go in and go, okay, so I understand that this year they've done 3,000 hours, or which is unfortunately not unusual, but it gives me that understanding of going, yep, okay, I can go in and go, well, I know that Bridget has been awarded this year, she's done these many hours, she's gone out on these many duties, she's got a promotion in this space, she's gone to the floods and done those sorts of things. So then it gives me an idea of being able to pull that together to then nominate somebody for an award, or and it's not just that stuff that's kept in my head, because I may know a number of people, but I may be then putting people in for awards that are not within my general purview as well, and also having a better understanding of being on our awards committee, then I can go in and check against some of this information as well. So that makes it really easy. But as I said, from the volunteer point of view, knowing what my quals are, knowing what's coming up, knowing what's expiring, and being also then to add in my extra hours for admin and all of those sorts of things, and have an idea of what I've done and what I've achieved this year, makes it a lot easier. From the Youth Point platform that we're going to be using, really having that accessibility of on the phone, being able to do forms and stuff on the phone, being able to access my information so I can keep it up to date, being able to pay for the program fees that will be coming up just straight through that application. Then we don't have to worry about bank details, all of that sort of stuff. That just makes it that one-stop shop. And then also being able to forward out the like forms and everything directly to people once again, it just makes it that easier on both sides, because then you're not scrambling. Like, I've managed a volunteer program where we've had umpteenth dozen spreadsheets and trying to keep all of those up to date and in my head, and God knows, as we've all been in those different spaces, but also having something on one platform and something on somebody else. So it helps have all that information in one space and supports volunteer involvement, and means that we're not trying to find the same information and ask the same question 10 different dozen times just to put it into the same space as well. So yeah.
That sounds awesome. I was really thinking there around the awards stuff. It probably helps highlight those quiet achievers, or people that don't necessarily come up on our radars because they don't, they're not as outward going as maybe some of our other volunteers. So I imagine for you, particularly being able to see how they're tracking and what they've done, make sure there's a bit of equity there around the awards and recognition that goes out, which would be amazing, and certainly would be helping with the retention as well. Amazing. And Kate, I can see that you're quite active on the chat. Is there anything you would like to add? I don't want to make you repeat yourself.
No, I was talking about something else. So it's very similar to Vanessa. It's the ability for the volunteers to be able to see their own profile, and primarily for me, the ability to record their own hours, so to keep their own record of their involvement and to be able to go back and see what they've done and how they've done it. It's got what they call e-learning modules there too, so you can use it to you create your own e-learning modules, and the volunteers can go in and complete those, and you can link that into particular roles or the ability to actually do something. So for example, if you're volunteering in aged care, we will need you to acknowledge that you understand the aged care code of conduct. And so rather than just having them tick a box or something, they can go and actually show that they understand the content and they've read that, they're completing an e-learning module, and they go, yep, that's fine. They can it's fine for them to volunteer in aged care. And I need to be able to demonstrate that for say if we were audited by the commission. However, a big issue for me is actually getting the volunteers to go in and log in. So initially when they start, it's kind of like this brand new thing. But the longer the volunteer has been there, the less likely they are to go in and keep a record of their hours. So it's like I feel like I'm constantly playing catch up. And I understand the frustration with this. Like, people have so much digital stuff in their lives. It's like one extra system for them to have to deal with. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know the answer to it. It's just a little bit of a struggle, I think, sometimes in trying to convince people that this is really important for them to do it. And it's not just that we've got a record of their hours, but we know that they're in to do that work and stuff like that. It's just so important. And I've had some feedback about that, just, for a volunteer saying it's just really annoying that we have to do it because, driver mentors, for example, they have to complete something else as part of the driver mentor program, for that program, and then they have to go in and do stuff for me. So it's like, can't we just have one integrated system? But impossible. And I think that's one of the reasons why I want to explore something different, because you don't want to make the volunteer's life difficult. You want it to be a seamless situation, but technology can sometimes get into the way, get in the way of that. So it's just have to have consideration around it.
And a really valid point as well. And I'm really glad you raised it, because it's not all smooth sailing. It's not all, not everyone's going to think it's the dream. Certainly from an administrative side of things, you can see the benefits, but being able to see that from a practical side as a volunteer is sometimes tricky. So it actually segues lovely into the next question, which is, how do you best manage the culture change when introducing new platforms? We know that our volunteers, some of them have been around for a long time and have been doing the programs for an extended period, and then we bring in new systems, and that can change the way that they're doing things that they have been comfortable with. It can also make it hard to engage for some people. So how do you manage the culture change of either bringing in a new system or transferring to another system? Or what's your experience been in that space?
I think the biggest thing from our point of view is communication. Just sitting down, having those conversations, because I know that we've had some changes within St John, we have a staff HR system, we have a volunteer system, we'll have a youth system, and how they all talk to each other. But then we had to introduce our volunteers to a different space around particularly reporting incidents and near misses and things like that. So it was used in the HR system. But there wasn't initially a lot of communication about that. Like, the management team knew, but to the general volunteer, they just all of a sudden got this email and you're expected to do all of this stuff. Just really that, if we're not communicating well and being open to those conversations and going, okay, this is what we're doing, this is the reason why we're doing it, this is how you do it, and put it out, dot points, please do this, this and this. But on your back end, making sure that, if a volunteer is going into the HR system, we don't need to have their bank details. We don't need to have these other things, purely if they're going to be doing these other things, and making sure you've got all that in place before going out and going and communicating, and even asking what do you think is the best way for you guys to access and do this as well. Because I think, communication's not there, then that's when people get frustrated because they don't feel that they're being involved in the change. They don't feel that they're part of the system, and then we'd lose people, or there are a lot more complaints, and I know we've all been in similar situations ourselves where you go, well, why is this happening, and no conversation, or not even the ability to ask the questions has been an issue as well. So being open to going, not being frustrated about those questions because you made this decision 6 to 12 months ago, but having that opportunity for people to have those conversations and ask about that too.
So I'm hearing a lot of being intentional about it, being purposeful about it, fully understanding what you're doing before moving across, or at least providing opportunities for people to feed in where they need to. That sounds awesome. How about you, Kate?
Yeah, look, I'm going to agree with Vanessa on every point that she made. I think, it's been a while, obviously, since we switched to Better Impact. But within the organisation itself, I've been there for a lot of systems changes in an HR space and a payroll space. And, sometimes there can be an expectation that this is the change, this is what you should understand, and this is what you need to do. But, everyone looks at things differently. So I think it's just really important to have a very clear project plan and communicate with the stakeholders along the way, and accept that not everyone is going to go down exactly the same pathway that you might intend to happen. And really clear guidance as well on what people are expected to do. It's interesting that Vanessa mentioned about using the HR system for incident management too. So, because I'm involved in HR for the paid worker side of stuff as well, and they're talking about incident management and how can we do that. And then so the solution was, we just put the incident management system in the HR software, to which I came back and said, well, how does that work for volunteers? If the incident is related to a volunteer, whereas all the HR system is connected to a paid worker, how do you track, how do you manage that incident reporting process within an HR platform? So you have to look at something that will work for everyone, and it's not always a solution just to go down a particular pathway. So communication, absolute key, and having a really good project plan. That's where things fall down if there's not a good project plan for it.
Great. Communication and project plan sounds like the way to go. And I feel like communication is one of those things that is, as soon as you want to change anything, it's really about how you communicate with who and when. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. So we've come to our final question. And the final question is, how do you manage the complexities with digital literacy and access across your organizations, and when managing the software and having your volunteers work with them?
I think for us, like the youth side of things, yes, we're still going to have challenges in this space, but at least having the app there makes life easier because so many people are on their phones and don't always necessarily have a desktop or a laptop or things like that. So at least having that other side of the platform makes it easier for access, and you can help sit down and work through somebody through that as well. I do know that the orchestrator side of things for putting people on events and activities, that can be done from the admin side of stuff as well, and keep track of, you know, what they've done. And so it is the rostering system too. So that makes life a lot easier from the other side, that you don't necessarily need to always have somebody be able to go into that platform to up to date things and all the rest of it. But at least you can have people that are able to help coach and work through those things too. And I think that's really important for people to be able to walk side by side with them and go, well, hey, can I show you how to do this? Is it accessible? I think if it's easily accessible on your phone, that makes life a lot easier for so many people, because like even with Orchestrator, yes, I can log into my phone. I can still do the same things I can do on my laptop. So I could be anywhere and everywhere, but I can also sit down with Kate and sit with her and go, okay, well, when are you going? This is what you need to do. When you're going, this is what you need to do. And they can see it on what they would be looking at it, instead of trying to do it on a laptop, which would look different than the phone accessibility too. But at least like with Operoo, having those basic things in the background, that these are the only things that they need to update, or these are the only things that they need to do, and having that communication, and even having that written documents as well, so people can access those too. But certainly showing people and having accessibility in other different spaces too.
Great, thank you. Kate, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, again, similar. So everything I can do online, I can do offline. So I'm not necessarily expecting the volunteer to go in and do everything online. So when I meet with people, I very often ask the question about digital literacy. And in fact, when they do register, that is a question: what's your digital literacy skills? Because you know, we might be looking for a volunteer to support digital literacy. So I'm not necessarily expecting a volunteer to go in and use the system. There's no expectation around that. So they can complete an application form on paper, or I can sit with them and complete the application form together online. And it's actually no different if any of you have registered for Work with Vulnerable People registration. Volunteers do need help with that, because it's not an easy system. So it's no different to helping out with people to apply with that, which has no offline option, by the way. So yeah, it's about giving people the ability to kind of choose what might be best for them. So you might have the option of logging your hours directly through the app, but volunteers will email me what they've done. So they don't want to log in, and I'm not making them log in. It'd be great if they did, and I know a lot of them don't, but giving the options to people to do that. And also in all this online space, what's the accessibility of the website or the app as well? Because I have worked with a couple of volunteers in the past with you know, vision, around vision, and so factoring that in, and whether they can actually do stuff online with the wasn't really an issue at the time, but you know, just factoring that in as well.
Great. And I think the overriding message there is that the human element is still very much needed, and will always be needed, to make sure that we are connecting with the volunteers. So that comes to the end of the questions that I have. Are there any that have come through on the chat? I apologise, Rhonda and Mel, I'm not sure who was monitoring that, that we'd like to get to in this moment?
Yeah, there's a couple on there that have a few responses to them as well. So there was a question around, do we need volunteer permission to put their details on a platform? So Vanessa said, you know, there's no real difference to having it on a spreadsheet or paper copies. And, you know, it's quite similar to using a HR platform for paid staff, for example. And Kate has said that generally in her case, volunteers enter the information themselves, and they are confirming that they understand the privacy policies and so on. So that's good. Question about the costs of Better Impact, and Kate's provided a response, and I also put the link to the Better Impact website to find out more information there. Comments about older volunteers that don't have digital literacy. And there was one question there about IT support, so maybe good for Kate and Vanessa to respond around what IT support is available. Thanks to Taylor from RSPCA, who's popped in, that she has called multiple times and they've been very helpful. So I think that was based around Better Impact, but could be wrong.
Yeah, I will say Better Impact has a great support mechanism. They've got a little chat function within the database, and you can just like type a question in and someone will get back to you pretty quickly usually. So it's and they do have a base in Australia as well. So it's really excellent. Can't fault it. And so if I can just come back to Glenda's question, I think it was Glenda about the older and digital literacy issues with older volunteers. Younger people too can have not great digital literacy, so we shouldn't make the assumption just because they're young that they're going to be good at digital literacy. So it's about asking the question and being aware of what support people might need to get through stuff.
I think with that also, Kate, like we provide in our spaces opportunities for people to be able to access the computer and the internet there as well. So if it's not something that they have access to home, because we do know that particularly the cost of living and everything, that might be something that goes by the wayside. And once again, it's you have the ability to sit beside the person and be able to have those conversations and work them through that system so that then they can learn as well. But yeah, having those opportunities to have it in a particular space, not that everybody wants to visit, but at least with new volunteers, you can sit down and work through and show them those different things too. But definitely printing stuff out is, yeah, one of those things too.
Amazing. I think if the conversation in the chat's been answering the questions and all those kind of things, Kate, have you got any last thoughts you would like to share on this topic before we head off?
Yeah, look, it's a really big commitment to find an application that works for you and develop it so it works for you, the organisation, and for the volunteers. So I feel really sorry for anyone that has to go through this, especially, you know, because I'm looking at it too. But I think the important thing is to ask the question, what do you need? And what do you want, and what do the volunteers need, and what do the volunteers want? It would be great if we had thousands and hundreds and millions of dollars to develop a bespoke system that included a learning management system in it and did everything that you wanted it to do. But unfortunately, that we don't have lots of money. So yeah, just work out what you want and how you're going to do it.
Yeah. Vanessa, any final thoughts?
I absolutely agree with Kate on this one, is to sit down, particularly if you've gone from spreadsheets and stuff, and believe me, I understand the pain. But sit down and work out what you need from a system. Sit down and what you want it to do for you, and how that's going to fit into the platforms. And then if you've got an idea what you need, an idea, you know, for the information you need, the reporting systems and things like that, that then makes it easier. And I know it sounds like a bit of work beforehand, but then that makes it then easier for you to go, well, actually, no, that program is not going to work for us. That's not going to do. Or if you get to a program where you go like Better Impact, and I've looked at that in a different space and, you know, found that was going to be amazing. Unfortunately, COVID hit and money changed. But also that, you know, having that idea of the support you need, what you need, how you'd like to see it run, and also, you know, the reporting stuff that you're going to need from it as well makes life a lot easier before we even head into that space of looking for things. I know, like with why because we're currently in the process of changing over to Operoo, I literally sat down and go, okay, these are the things I need. Can this, and I spoke to somebody going, can this program do these things? You know, if not, what can we do to change it, or what is it called in your language? And that's just made life easy to go, yes, we can do this, or we can't do that. And I go, right, well, I need to find some way else of doing that, but at least I know the basics of what I'm looking for.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Vanessa and Kate. Really appreciate your pearls of wisdom on this topic. I know that it can feel quite daunting when we're moving into those. I just quickly wanted to point to the chat. We're about to put up the survey link for feedback on this session. We're really keen to make sure that we continually improve and take on board your feedback when we're delivering sessions such as this. Thank you, everybody. The link is now in the chat. Please head over there for a quick 5 minutes. Let us know how we did. And hopefully we'll see some of you back at 1 p.m. For the child safety with the Department of Justice coming up. We'll see you all there.